Welcome to Amintro Family, the podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Sammut. We hope you're enjoying the free online platform and community for family caregivers, be it through the Amintro Family app or amintrofamily.com, because it's all about helping those caring for their aging parents and relatives or friends and to connect and share experiences and access valuable resources. Joining us today, Caroline Tapp-McDougall, the Executive Director of the Canadian Abilities Foundation, publisher of Caregivers Solutions magazine, founder of the Canada Cares Awards, and the author of The Complete Guide for Family Caregivers. Caroline, we could search the planet far and wide. It's going to be hard to find anybody that knows more about caregiving than you do.
Well, thank you.
You've put in the time, you've put in the effort, and we appreciate it, and you're doing that with us today. And, you know, Caroline, you came into my life at a time when my father was still around, but he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I made a commitment then to say yes to any conversation involving the disease and to caregiving. And you came on my Sirius XM show at the time. And so much of what you have done with caregiving has really informed the decisions that I would make. And I first off wanted to thank you for that.
I appreciate that. I'm glad that helped.
It did. Knowing you has really helped. And when you become a caregiver, building and being part of a community is so helpful. You had me MC some events and fundraisers for Canada Cares, and it meant so much. And I didn't know that this was going to be part of the experience, because you're thinking so much, I've got a job to do. I'm in front of an audience. I hope I do right by Canada Cares. And Caroline, they've handed me the keys to something very, very important. But part of what I got out of it was that I got to meet and speak with so many special people about caregiving and sharing stories with one another. And it really hammered home the importance of community when you're going through the caregiving journey.
Exactly. And that's one of the fundamental things that has been important to me, because I remember when we founded Canada Cares, I was really involved with a journey with my parents. My dad had ALS and my mom was a stroke survivor, and she lived for 10 years after her stroke. And so that was quite the journey. And I remember, experiencing that and being a lot on my own at the time and thinking, wow, how do we connect? We've all got similar experiences, and parents have that when they're raising children. But on the other side of things, we weren't connecting and sharing those experiences. And that has really changed.
Yeah. And for you, with your particular story with caregiving, as you mentioned, with your mother having suffered a stroke, your father diagnosed with ALS, how was it to provide care for both parents who had very different needs?
Exactly. Well, it didn't happen at exactly the same time, but it was a learning journey, because, again, you have to learn about their condition. And in my dad's case, it was very slow. And so we were doing a lot of diagnosing, a lot of testing, back and forth to different centers, because back then we had to go to London, Ontario, because that was the center for ALS. With my mom and the stroke, it was a lot more common. Not so much in women, but there was a lot more information about stroke. So I think it was a little bit easier to understand what had happened or what was happening with my mom. And there were more resources that we could pull into her care. But with my dad, it was much more difficult and much more, I think, more traumatic, because his decline was much faster as well.
So was it just you, or did you have like a sibling, a partner, anybody else that was, 1A and 1B?
I had a brother. I have a brother.
Yeah.
He was not involved in the care at that time.
Okay.
He had his own things that were going on. My husband was extremely supportive, but we run our own business, and you can appreciate small business is 7 days a week, 24/7 at times. And we had 3 children who were still quite young and in school when this whole journey happened. So it was really a stretch. It was a stretch financially. It was a stretch emotionally. It was a stretch basically physically as well. And nothing has changed for a lot of caregivers in that way, because it is a holistic experience.
That's right. As severe as that caregiving story is in that situation, it is quite common. And I'm sure you've come to appreciate that since then with all the people you've come across.
Well, exactly. And nobody's journey is the same, even if you have the same condition, because different people have different environments that they live in, different circumstances, different history, again, different families. But it's still very much, if you have a supportive family, it really makes a huge difference. If
Yeah.
people, even if one or two members of the family can step up, really makes a big difference in the quality of care, but also in the stress level and the sort of impact it has on others.
I think in every episode of this show so far, and I'm going to, this is, listeners, this is going to be part of the conversation, I think, with every episode, being reactive versus being proactive. How much was that balance for you? Because I always go back to how it was with my dad, and when he got his diagnosis, and my wife and I made a commitment at being support for my mother, who was a primary caregiver, to make sure that we were always looking ahead. She was in it, but we were going to be the ones that were always going to be looking ahead and always get her thinking about next steps. Because we were concerned about her health, and we wanted to make sure that she was going to be okay throughout all this while we were caring for my dad. How much of your journey at that time how much were you being reactive versus being proactive?
I'm a proactive person.
Yeah.
And I was reactive. It was just everything was coming at me. Now that my children are grown, and if I went through the situation, I think it would be a different journey for me, and perhaps for the person I was caring for as well. You can be as proactive as you want in some areas, but in others, especially the medical area, you don't know what's going to happen from day to day. And so, there are a lot of surprises, and you can prepare yourself, and you can basically sort of have your stress or de-stressors and your support system in place, but there's still very much on the fly.
Yeah, and things that don't seem to change. When you're in the middle of it as a caregiver, you're having to make extremely important decisions, life-altering decisions, life-changing decisions under extreme duress and exhaustion and pressure and anxiety. And I know you've done everything in your career to help people throughout all that, but nevertheless, those are the circumstances very often.
They are. And I think also in some cases, you've got the added level of family discourse or financial stress. And I think when families aren't getting along well, and there's a sort of another voice going, why are you doing that? Or how is that happening? Or can you do that again? I remember even when my husband passed, he passed a few years ago, but there was a lot of discussion about, are you doing the right thing? Have you checked this? Have you done that? And so you start second guessing yourself as well, and trying to kind of figure out, am I really doing the right thing? Because there's no rule book here.
Yeah.
It's not, and you have to trust your health professionals or ask lots of questions all the time, because they're busy too. And, sometimes there's something that gets missed, or you need to know more about something. And so there's a lot of that goes on as well for caregivers, especially in situations where you've got a chronic condition or a disease that's progressive.
When you're advocating for the loved one that you are caring for, in your case, a couple of them, at one point in your life. And we talked about this in the previous episode that we've done here on Amintro Family, the podcast with Susie Singer-Carter. We talked about the fine line you have to walk in advocating for your loved one, be it with the healthcare, mostly with the healthcare in terms of health, that you want to advocate, you want to be there, but it's almost as if you don't feel like you can go too far, because then the person that you are caring for is going to be dismissed in some way, that your aggressiveness could affect the care that your loved one is going to get. Did you find that, and do you often find that?
Oh, absolutely. And I would do things differently now because I have different knowledge, but I ran up against the union at the long-term care facility because I was asking for things that they were saying weren't possible. You know, I was asking for a staffing change because my mom wasn't getting along with someone. No, we can't do that because she has seniority. Well, yes, but right. And, you know, things were going missing and I was, you know, asking questions about why they were going missing. Well, you know, there wasn't really an interest in figuring that out because that would open another whole kettle of fish, so to speak. So, I always say that what you need to do wherever you go is you need to build relationships. And so if you build a relationship that's based on antagonism or on fighting or on arguing, I don't think it works in these situations. So I always suggest to people, however much or however difficult it is, try to build that relationship, recognize that there's another side to the story, and try to work with that, because otherwise you're going to just hit, like you said, a brick wall.
That's a great tip for anybody that is caregiving, because I think when you are caregiving for somebody and then they get relocated to a full-time care facility, your focus becomes so narrowed and it's just on your loved one. And it's just so establishing relationships with other people is certainly going to help, because it's like there's a bank to draw from with every one of those that you come into contact with and that you start relationships with, that you can...
Even the PSWs and
Yes.
the people who are in home care. I mean, a lot of people, that's a big change for someone when somebody's suddenly coming into a home, especially for some older adults. They're worried about security, they're worried about their personal stuff and care. It's been very private for them. And so all of a sudden you've got this stranger who's going to do very personal things in your house. And so I find, again, that's a very difficult situation for families. And when they want to coach someone to change, you know, don't give him the jam on the bread, do this or do that, some little it can become very difficult because you've got a long list. He likes this, he doesn't like this. And so you've got to pick your fights, so to speak. Be organized, help them with coaching in terms of lists and guides and things like that. But sometimes you just have to go, oh, okay, whether the jam is strawberry or raspberry, you know, sometimes you've got to just take the best position and say thank you. And also always thank you. Always
Yes,
thank you.
that's
These
right.
people do not, just as we go through stress, people who are helping us go through stress as well. And our brothers and sisters and the other people in the family who are helping, like, it's always appreciation and thank you.
Here's a question that I should have asked you about 6 or 7 years ago when my dad was still around and my mom was his caregiver, but either there was a PSW coming out to help out at her home, or my dad was relocated to a full-time care facility. Let's pretend it's about 6 years ago, okay, Caroline? And I have less gray hair on my face right now and my beard. Okay, I look. I hope you remember me from about 6 or 7 years ago.
Oh,
Stunning, Caroline. So let's go back to that time, okay?
All
My
right,
vision
all
was
right.
better. I looked better. Okay, so I'm going to ask you this question as a former self. Caroline, my mom is doing too much. She has relinquished some responsibilities for my dad, or at least she has said she's going to, but the PSW comes over and doesn't do much because my mom still does everything. Or my dad is in a full-time care facility where a staff of people is supposed to be taking care of him, but I am going there and I'm finding my mom visiting and getting all of his food, mopping floors, changing him, doing all the things that somebody on staff should be doing. What do I tell my mother?
You give her permission to step back, but you let her do it.
Let her do it.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that.
If the facility lets her do it and she wants to do it, there's the conversation that says, this is her occupation. She loves this man. She wants to help out. And so if she goes home and does nothing all day, how is that going to be for her well-being? So there's a very delicate balance, isn't there, between, I mean, yes, she shouldn't be mopping the floor. But in general, I think if she's got the time and the well-being to do this, there's a real balance. So I would encourage her to step back and get some rest. I would plan other activities that will engage her with other family members so that there is a a reboot, so to speak, but it's a real hard one. But I know from my own experience, sometimes you get a lot of satisfaction in doing it yourself, and
Yeah.
it's hard to step back.
Yeah, it is. And it certainly was for her, Caroline. I appreciate that. So how many years ago would it have been that you were taking care of your parents to now? Because I'm trying to get a gauge on just how many years you've been helping people with all this experience you have.
I think I'm 69 now, and this happened in my 40s. So it's been, yeah, I give or
Wow.
take, quite a few
Wow.
years.
By the way,
And
69,
yeah,
that can't be true because you don't look
it's
69
true. Thank
whatsoever.
you. But yeah. So yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
And I think it's been very interesting because we've seen a lot of change in the systems for caregivers. We've seen things like the caregiver tax credit come in. We've seen a lot more discussion. There's Lord knows how many caregiving agencies and organizations now, a lot of them. I can't keep track of all of them. And there's a lot more discussion about this. It used to be that you'd show up at the cocktail party and it would be, a few people with a surprise, like, oh my goodness, I've got this, now. First of all, it's almost everyone. But
Yeah, that's
secondly,
right.
there's a lot more that you can do. And it's not a hidden, embarrassing thing anymore. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
It's much more out in the open, and it's discussed.
Yeah.
My dad has Alzheimer's, my this, my that. We're not hiding it.
Yeah, and that's what I love about this podcast and Amintro Family, the app as well, is that there's a forum. It's a place where you can share experiences, and it is welcome and it's invited. In fact, so because all I know of you is, I mean, caregiving. It's you're all about caregiving. That's the version of you that I know. Did that start? Did all of this, everything that you're doing now, start with your parents and caregiving for them?
I run a private business, and we're in the healthcare publishing field. So I've always been involved, since my early 20s, because I'm a journalist by trade.
Yeah.
And so basically our publications and the work we did put me in a position, for instance, to be the chair of the board for the Canadian Occupational Therapy Foundation. So by doing that work, I learned an incredible amount about caregiving and the role that occupational therapists could have. And then it was, home care was coming in, those sorts of things. So I think as a journalist, I was interested, and then the specialty. And now I'm the chair of the Canadian Abilities Foundation. So we look at beyond caregiving, we look at also the needs of people with disabilities and, young families as well. So we're the only organization that actually takes the spectrum of, from very young right the way to aging. But a lot of the needs are the same. When you look at the stress on families and the things that need to be done and the advocacy and the things we've talked about today, it's really no different where you are on that journey.
So a difference, as you've highlighted, is the amount of discussion that is happening nowadays through caregiving, what have you. Even still, do you feel that caregivers are still getting lost, that they continue to be unsung heroes?
Oh, yes. And our Canada Cares Awards, again, that you've helped us very graciously support over the years, that's exactly what that campaign is about. Yes, we give funding to families, but we also continue to raise awareness, because one minute you're a caregiver and the next minute you're not, and it works the other way. You're suddenly a caregiver on a Monday morning, and it's brand new. It's your journey, and you don't really know where to start. And some people, again, if they live rurally or they live in other parts of Canada where the resources aren't available, or they're from a family of a different background, there's different cultural things that happen as well within the caregiving arena. So they're often unsung heroes, and there's some very young people who provide care too. There's a whole organization about, discussions about, 6, 7, 10-year-olds who are actually helping and carrying a lot of the burden around caregiving for a parent or for a grandma. So it's still quite unsung. And in the workplace, it's still a bit taboo because people are missing work because they're caregiving or running dad to the doctor. I mean, I'm sure some of those things where you've had to juggle things.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
the workplace is still a bit of a a hidden area, even though there are supports.
Well, and I was very lucky at that time because I was working for people that were very empathetic and were like, hey, let us know what you need. We'll figure it out. And I felt like if I had to take my dad to the doctor, I had to do something. Like I had to kind of drop everything or, look ahead to a day next week. Yeah. They totally understood. Do you find that workplaces, from what you hear, are more empathetic, would be more like that?
Yes, but not everybody can do that. I mean, in small business, it's fine for larger businesses because you've got backup and you've got, you've got the benefits programs and you've got these things. But I mean, as a small business owner, someone says to me that they need to leave immediately and I have a client deadline, we don't have backup for our backup in the same way. Or if you're a retailer, all of a sudden you're going to close the store because,
that's right.
So I think there's sort of still two different sides of that. I mean, so some people have benefits and the luxury, and I call it luxury, of being able to do that. Others don't. And so there's still that whole divide, I think.
Caroline, what advice would you have for somebody that all of a sudden has become a caregiver? They're brand new to it. What would you say to them?
I would say these days there are amazing resources, like your podcast, like our magazines, like a lot of the organizations. So I would say, first off, do some research. And secondly, I think recognize who your parent is before the condition or before the diagnosis, and then as you're making plans. A lot of people just come in and they basically, and I did this is how we're going to do this is how, but because it fit my schedule, it was the logical way to do it. But, I forgot some of that individual personalized care. So I think if you can sort of plan based on what you know, but then look at it with a lens to say, okay, this is our personal individual situation. I think you'll be in much better shape. And of course, get your support system as best you can.
Well, okay, so that support system, that's where I was going to go next. Maybe it's your best friend, a pal of yours. Maybe it's your spouse, your girlfriend, husband, whatever, a boyfriend, whatever it might be. Somebody that's very close to you that has become a caregiver. How do you support that person?
You ask them how you can help, because you may think taking over a casserole on a Saturday afternoon is going to be, and it may simply be having a phone call after hours with them, taking time to let them vent, or, it could be coming over and doing a load of laundry. It really depends on the situation, but ask and be there. I think that's the difference. And some of it, again, is just communication and contact rather than actually physically being there.
I mentioned getting to MC a couple of your events in the past and meeting some amazing people. You have surely met some amazing caregivers over the years. Does any one or two of them really stand out for you, Caroline, that you could tell us about right now?
There was a family in Ottawa that we met that had adopted 3 children from the same family. It was a very troubled situation, and they'd adopted the 3 children and they were caring for their parents at the same time. And one of them was a social worker, the other one was a nurse. But I just looked at that dynamic and what they were doing and how incredible they were. But even, we've got a list on our website of the people that we've recognized just last year. And, there are 20, 30 of them a year. And again, husbands caring for wives who are so dedicated. One man, he was explaining to me he'd never even used the washing machine before.
Wow,
he learned how to cook. And so again, it's inspiring in a way that people step up and do these things in difficult situations.
I remember there was one case where you all, I think it was with Canada Cares, where you all helped out with a family. It might have been the family that you were talking about. You got them a van. You figured out a way to get them a van.
That's exactly
to help them
the
out.
family. We drove that van across Canada first.
Really?
Promoting the Canada Cares Awards, and then we were fortunate enough to be able to give it away. So yes, those kinds of things, and they happen regularly. We hear about these stories, and it's a challenge, I think, when they're caring for young children with special needs and then the elder care, and it hits you right in midlife.
And amazing people, both personally and professionally. They're always helping people. That's all they do.
Yeah. I know.
They deserve
They're
a van.
special people. Yeah. And sometimes it's the nurse that goes home from her shift and is helping to care for her parents or her sister, or,
That's right.
and you're thinking, oh my
never
goodness, you're
ends.
incredible.
It never-
And then she's adopting a dog as well.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
like, wow.
Oh my
Wow.
goodness. And Caroline, you have your annual Canada Cares fundraiser, and this year it's at the Avant-Garde Gallery here in Toronto on December 2nd. You got a live band. One of your board members has a band.
I know,
This is
isn't
their
that
band?
great? He's a social worker. So he works helping people to find jobs. And yeah, he's got a band. So it's fabulous. And we're actually looking for artists to actually send us 10 by 10 little contributions on what they think it means to be caring. And so we're going to auction those off. So if there are any artists listening to the podcast, get in touch with us, because we're looking for those kind of contributions, because we're at an art gallery.
Yeah. So, well,
And
how can they get in touch with you? And how can people learn more about Canada Cares?
Well, they can basically get in touch with me, and that's an easy thing to do because I'm easy to find, Caroline Tapp-McDougall. But the Canadian Abilities Foundation, it's very easy to find us, and Canada Cares is also easy once you Google us now. Thankfully, we post enough content that we come up.
That's right. You've been around for a while now, haven't you?
We have. That's right.
Yeah.
Probably, the Abilities Foundation over 40 years, and Canada Cares, I think we're about 15 now.
Amazing. You do great work. Executive Director of the Canadian Abilities Foundation, publisher of Caregivers Solutions magazine, founder of the Canada Cares Awards, and the author of The Complete Guide for Family Caregivers. Caroline Tapp-McDougall, we really couldn't have gotten all of this information from any one person that I know of, Caroline. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm Jeff Sammut. This has been another episode of Amintro Family, the podcast, which you can hear first on the Amintro Family app and then wherever you listen to podcasts. We've got a new episode dropping every 2 weeks. Check out amintrofamily.com. And a reminder, we want to hear your stories on the forum. We could share them here as well on Amintro Family, the podcast.